Sometimes being alone can nourish your soul more than any relationship ever could. I know that might sound a bit intense, even uncomfortable, especially if you grew up believing that love saves you, that loneliness means something's wrong, and that healing comes from someone else. But Carl Jung understood something profound. Some wounds only heal in silence. Some strengths only awaken when no one's watching. And some parts of you won't come alive until you stop chasing companionship at any cost. In this video, you'll discover why choosing to live alone, consciously, can unlock your deepest transformation. And by the end, you won't crave connection the same way again. You'll become the connection. So stay with me until the end, because I'm going to show you how to turn solitude into strength, even if right now it still aches. And if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, now's a good time. Here we talk about consciousness transformation and real psychology. No filters, no fluff, just truth. From early on, we're taught that being alone means something's wrong. The quiet, introspective child is seen as a problem, a single adult is seen as incomplete, and silence? We fill it immediately, with noise, distractions, voices, anything to avoid what might surface when the world goes quiet. Jung said that to become whole, a human being must journey within, but society taught us the opposite. We've been conditioned to find ourselves in others, to wear a mask that adapts, pleases, avoids rejection. We confuse that mask with who we truly are. Over time, we begin to mistake dependency for connection, and the more we cling to that pattern, the scarier solitude becomes. But what hurts isn't the present moment. The pain that surfaces in solitude is old. It's the past knocking. It's forgotten wounds, buried memories, rejections we never understood. When there's no one left to perform for, they all come to the surface. It's not your soul that panics in the quiet, it's your ego. The ego needs responses, needs validation. It needs others to reflect it back to itself. The soul doesn't fear silence, but the ego does, and for good reason. It was trained to survive through outside approval. To the ego, being alone feels like a threat. To the soul, it feels like a return. Jung understood. There are times when retreat isn't weakness, it's initiation. When we're truly alone and free from distraction, what arises isn't emptiness. It's the unconscious content we've suppressed for years. And that's where the real work begins. Being alone is uncomfortable because it forces us to feel. And when you've spent most of your life just reacting, feeling is hard. But that discomfort, that's the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming your true self. When you stop running from silence and start listening to it, what comes isn't fragility, it's clarity. You're not being punished for being alone. You're being invited to finally meet yourself without noise, without distractions, without anyone else in the room. And when that reconnection begins, it doesn't come with fireworks, it comes with stillness. Sometimes it comes with a void that feels empty. But that void isn't nothing. It's space. And in that space, the soul finally breathes again. Jung called individuation the path to becoming who you really are. Not the image others projected onto you. Not the person society wanted, but the part of you that always existed, quietly waiting behind the noise. And that path never begins in chaos. It begins when you choose silence, when instead of escaping into distraction, you turn inward. Voluntary solitude is not avoidance, it's bravery. It's you telling your unconscious, I'm ready to see what I've been avoiding. It's when the role steps aside for the human underneath. When the stage collapses and you finally see the actor who's been hiding behind it all. Society taught us that stillness is loss and solitude is weakness. But Jung knew stillness is where the true self begins to emerge. And it doesn't happen loudly. It begins subtly, silently, almost imperceptibly. But it changes everything. When the external noise fades, your soul's voice finally comes through. And it doesn't scream, it whispers. It reveals fragments, memories, intuitions, feelings, buried beneath years of rushing, pleasing, performing. And in that moment, something strange may rise inside you. A discomfort in not knowing who you are, without your roles, routines, or relationships. But that's how you know the real path has begun. The true self is not a ready-made identity. It reveals itself gradually, only when there's space within to receive it. That's the journey. Not a straight path, but a deep one. A process of removing, not adding. Of returning, not searching. And it only begins when you choose to step out of the world and into yourself. Solitude, then, is no longer absence. It becomes presence, a powerful presence, so strong that for the first time you begin to notice what's always been inside you, but never had the silence to speak. In this space, something beautiful and subtle begins. What once felt solid within you starts to crack. And those cracks, they're not destruction, they're revelation. In Jungian psychology, the persona is the mask we wear to navigate the world, the helpful one, the strong one, the funny one, the competent one. The persona isn't fake, but it's not whole. It's a role designed to protect and fit in. But a time comes when that mask no longer fits. And that moment almost always happens in silence. Because as long as we're surrounded by people, tasks, and expectations, the persona functions like armor. But in the quiet, it crumbles. You begin to realize how many of your thoughts, feelings, and actions were automatic. Emotional habits, learned responses, performances for approval. And when that theater falls apart, it's terrifying. Because what's left is just you, raw, real, unsure. But that's exactly where the soul steps in. Jung said individuation only happens when the persona loses its grip. And that doesn't happen by force. It happens gradually when you stop feeding the mask and begin nurturing the self. It's unsettling, yes. It may feel like the ground is vanishing beneath you, like you don't know who you are anymore. But that's not confusion, that's your beginning. You're finally stepping away from the version of yourself you were conditioned to be, creating space to meet who you really are. And at this point, it's completely normal for feelings like sadness, anger, or fear to rise to the surface. The persona, the mask you wore for so long, felt like it was you. So when it begins to fall away, everything you suppressed with it begins to rise. But this isn't a setback, it's a release. It's the unconscious letting go. Solitude now stops being just a condition. It becomes a tool, an internal mirror that reflects, deconstructs, and purifies. You're not losing yourself. You're shedding the layers that never truly belonged. And what remains, once all the noise is gone, is something real. Something that doesn't need an audience. Something that only comes alive when you're brave enough to face yourself without the mask. What appears first isn't lightness, it's density. Like walking into a room that's been locked for years and watching the dust rise. Silence stops being just emptiness. It becomes a mirror, and in it you begin to see everything you've avoided feeling your entire life. In Jungian psychology, all that hidden content is called the shadow. It's your denied parts, pain, fear, shame, anger, trauma, not because you're weak, but because you never had the space or support to face them. The shadow holds what was excluded, judged, or rejected. And when you stay in your solitude long enough, it finally has space to come forward. Suddenly old memories resurface. Emotions you thought were long buried rise with intensity. A sadness you can't name. An anger without a cause. A fear that feels endless. Silence begins to scream. And this is the point where many turn back. They run to distractions, empty relationships, and the comfort of the familiar because the shadow hurts. Facing it takes presence, humility, patience. There's no glamour here, just raw, honest truth. Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That's what's happening now. You're not falling back, you're being cleared out. This pain isn't punishment, it's a purge. Yes, you'll want to quit. You'll wonder if it's even worth it. But know this isn't the end, it's the middle, the turning point. The darkest moment before the light breaks. It's where everything in you begs to go back. But your soul has already moved forward, and it has no interest in repeating the past. This is where many get stuck, but also where some are reborn. Because those who stay through this discomfort walk through a hidden door. Those who face the shadow discover what was always waiting behind it. Strength, awareness, power. You're not falling apart, you're being reprogrammed. And what's rising within you, however messy, is the raw material of your transformation. The real question is, will you abandon yourself again? Or will you keep going, fear and all? Not everyone arrives at solitude by choice. Some are pushed into it, through pain, neglect, rejection. And that changes everything. Choosing solitude is powerful, but being forced into it through exclusion, that begins as pain. There's a big difference between waking up and saying I choose to be with myself and waking up to realize no one stayed, no one cared, no one came back. Many people wear loneliness like a badge of strength. They learn to manage life alone, not because they love solitude, but because they were let down too many times. They build walls not because they enjoy silence, but because closeness hurt too much. That kind of isolation doesn't heal, it hardens. Carl Jung warned that when the soul becomes too isolated, it begins to collapse inward. When isolation becomes survival, life energy stops flowing. People may look independent, but often what you're really seeing is a deep fear of being hurt again. There's a fine line between solitude and isolation, but it changes everything. In solitude, you find yourself. In isolation, you protect yourself. One heals, the other hides. That's why it's so important to ask honestly, did I choose this solitude, or did I just learn to live without others? Am I really at peace or just numb? These questions are uncomfortable, but they open the door to change. Because pain that goes unrecognized becomes a cycle. Pain that isn't felt becomes a pattern. And often the words "I don't need anyone" really mean "no one chose me." You are not broken. You just had to protect yourself. But maybe now it's time for something new. Time to let silence become a sanctuary, not a sentence. Time to stop carrying abandonment as your identity and start walking toward yourself, not in armor but with presence. True solitude heals. Forced solitude wounds. Knowing the difference is an act of self-love. And it might be your first step toward finally feeling whole. As your soul begins to feel safe again, your body responds. Because your body has learned to live on alert, to brace for rejection, to flinch against criticism. This transformation doesn't happen all at once. It unfolds slowly, subtly, but it's deeply freeing. You begin to feel that you no longer need to be on high alert. You don't have to constantly prove your worth. You can finally allow yourself to feel without the fear of being overwhelmed. This isn't disconnection, it's alignment. Your mind, body, and soul begin to move in harmony. And from this coherence, a new frequency emerges. One that doesn't rely on effort or outside approval. It simply exists, steady and whole. Solitude shifts from being a struggle to becoming a sanctuary. It no longer isolates you from the world. It just frees you from depending on it. In this space, you discover a quiet strength, a calm presence. You realize that being alone isn't weakness, it's completeness. And when your body finally feels that safety, it lets go. The tension softens. The fear subsides, and you're simply allowed to be without urgency, without fear. In that stillness, something begins to awaken. A soft, silent knowing that doesn't compete with noise or demand attention. It's a quiet voice within, your intuition. Intuition isn't about logic. It's not about seeking evidence. It's an inner sense that just knows. It waits for you to stop chasing answers and start trusting yourself. Carl Jung described intuition as a vital function of the psyche, an ability to sense deeper truths without needing to analyze them. It's a soul-driven intelligence that can only rise when the noise falls away. In this state of presence, you begin to feel what's right before you understand why. You sense shifts before they show. That's not magic, it's internal clarity, it's your system syncing in harmony. You begin noticing subtle things, discomforts you once ignored, things that no longer align with who you're becoming, an inner nudge to change course. And instead of dismissing it, you start trusting it. This inner guidance doesn't beg for permission, it doesn't need to explain. It comes from a place deeper than the ego, from the self, the most honest part of your being, the part that's always known, but never had space to speak. That's the gift of conscious solitude. It silences the outside world so you can finally hear your inner one. A world where answers aren't hunted down. They rise naturally. And your sense of presence becomes your direction. And as this presence deepens, a new image starts to take shape, your future self. But this isn't about chasing perfection. It's not about becoming someone else. It's quieter than that. You begin to feel the essence of the person you're becoming. And instead of running after them, you begin to walk with them. In Jungian terms, this is the self, the full and integrated soul. This future version of you isn't a goal, it's a guide, a compass that lives within. You realize that what you were searching for outside was never missing. It was inside you all along, just waiting for space to breathe. And the more you align with that presence, the more your choices become clear. Your boundaries become natural, your relationships deepen. This future self doesn't demand. It doesn't criticize your pace. It respects the steps you've taken. And as you grow closer to it, it becomes easier to say no to what drains you and yes to what feels true. You start living from that energy even before it becomes reality. You feel peace before success. You feel freedom before circumstances change. That changes everything. What used to be a goal becomes a vibration. What used to be a dream becomes a state of being. You stop needing the world to shift before you find peace. You are peace, and the world starts reflecting that back to you. This is the presence that doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't shapeshift. It leads, and in leading, it transforms. You're no longer healing the past or stuck in the present. You're now stepping into the person who can hold everything you once only dreamed of. Until now, the journey was about healing, quieting the noise, facing pain, holding space for transformation. But something shifts when you begin living as your future self. You stop fitting in and start emanating. Your energy no longer reacts, it radiates. You're no longer shaped by your surroundings. Instead, your presence begins to shape your world. Jung spoke of the self as the regulating center of the psyche. When you align with it, your energy becomes coherent. You're no longer led by lack or fear of rejection. You're led by inner integrity. People begin to treat you differently. Cycles that used to repeat begin to break. Draining patterns dissolve, not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped resonating with what kept you small. You no longer need to explain or prove. Your presence speaks. I listened to myself. I honored myself. I will no longer abandon myself for what doesn't serve me. This is not arrogance. This is alignment. You don't shrink. You don't dominate. You simply stand. And this grounded presence is magnetic. Where there was one seeking, now there is center. And life starts responding to that. You don't chase belonging anymore. You embody it. And as your energy stabilizes, love transforms. It's no longer about merging, losing, or needing. Love becomes a place of sharing, not saving. You no longer need someone to complete you. You're already whole. You love without losing yourself. You connect by choice, not out of fear. Because now solitude is not punishment. It's empowerment. And true love, as Jung said, cannot grow out of dependency. When each soul stands whole in its own center, only then can they truly meet. And from that space, love no longer cages, it liberates.